And welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. And this afternoon we've got John Gibson from the Evening Chronicle with us. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, good to see you again, mate. And let's start, before we look ahead to tonight's game, by looking back at the Sheffield United game. And obviously, when we were speaking last week, we gave our predictions. I was confident. I thought we'd get a win. I went for 2-1. I think you were going for a draw, I think, along with Malcolm. But we've got to be happy with the 3 points, first of all. Great way to start Project Restart for the Toon.
Absolutely. I mean, who would have thought 3-0? Certainly at half-time, who would have thought 3-0? But in fairness, I mean, cynics would probably say, being bookends, that the last two games, Southampton way back at the beginning of March and here, would be 10 men both times, of course. But I think that is unfair. I thought before half-time, Steve, we had established our dominance in the game. We'd missed a big chance, which we'd come to in a moment with Joelinton, who put it right later. But we were already beginning to dictate the game. Of course, the sending off had an effect, but we went on and won very, very comfortably and very, very convincingly. The sadness was that a lot of fans who would have adored a 3-0 victory and haven't been seen that at St James's Park weren't there to see it. They saw it in their living rooms, but they weren't in the ground.
I think you're right, John. I think the first half, certainly, looking back at the game, Newcastle did play well. I mean, there wasn't many chances. I think when we looked at it pre-match, we were talking about two well drilled defences, but Sheffield United and Newcastle, and we weren't expecting a lot of goals. Obviously, having said that, Joelinton did get through 1-on-1 with their goalkeeper, and
again,
I think there might not have been any fans at the ground, but it would be surprises if the team didn't hear a collective groan and sigh when the inevitable happened and he ended up falling over the ball or tripping over himself.
I mean, the amazing thing about that, Steve, was that when he missed the chance, you'd be absolutely delighted there was no fans in the ground because of the reaction he would have got. And when he scored, he'd be absolutely decimated. There was no fans in the ground. I mean, for me, that miss came at the end of the best move of the match. Because if you recall, Maximin got the ball virtually on our dead ball line, hemmed in, turned magnificently and struck first time a raking long pass to Almiron, who did what he always does, runs like the wind with it, and then just waited and timed it right for Joelinton running off the shoulder of the last defender, Egan, who didn't know where the heck Joelinton was. The trouble for Joelinton was that two things. When he got away, he had too much time to think about it because he had to run in on goal, and then all the gremlins start coming into your mind. And secondly, if you remember, Steve, he's in the inside left position, and he would have been much better at inside right because he almost walked round the ball to get it onto his right foot because he didn't want to finish. It was a natural left foot finish from the position he was in. He didn't want to take it with his left. He shaped his body to take it with his right and, of course, scuffed it and made a dreadful, dreadful mess of it, which made me rather grateful for his sake and for Newcastle United's sake that he did get a goal before the end to wipe that out of his memory.
First half, obviously, was quite tight. The second half, I was looking at it thinking it could go either way. Obviously, the turning point for the game and for Newcastle United, it turned out, was the sending off.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I looked at Sheffield United. They started very fast for the first quarter of an hour, and I thought, oh dear me, they've already had a game. They're up to pitch more than we are. Then we came into it very, very strongly. I thought they were poor. I watched them against Aston, taking nothing away from Newcastle, isn't that? I watched them at Aston Villa and they were poor. And even not at half time, I thought they're giving the ball away a lot under no pressure. And that's not like Sheffield United. That wasn't like Sheffield United. But I think this Egan has been a liability for them in what has been a very competent side. He made mistakes against Villa in the 0-0. All right, he got in a kerfuffle with Joelinton first half and they both got booked. And that was the decisive one, Steve, because the second half one was a yellow, in my opinion, was a yellow. He was grappling him, he was holding him back. And of course, having had a yellow, he had to go. The first one was, could the ref have just said to both of them, handbags, don't be so silly, boys, and get on with it? Yes, he could have done, in which case Egan wouldn't have been off. But once you're on a yellow, you don't do the sort of thing he did. But he let the big man get goal side of him, and he panicked. And in panicking, he handled him, and he had to be sent off, having had a yellow already. And it did change things. There's no question about that. But again, Stevens changed things when he decided to take a fresh air kick at the cross from Ritchie. I mean, we would have been. Ritchie had a great game, but we would have been saying that Ritchie's cross was absolutely terrible because it was straight to a defender in the middle of the goal, and it turned out to be an assist in the breakthrough goal because it went completely through Stevens' legs and Maximin was on to hit it. So he went from being the worst cross of the afternoon to the valuable assist that broke the duck. That's football.
It is football. You say Ritchie had a great game. I think it was a great team performance. Saint-Maximin as well, who you mentioned, who scored the goal. I mean, you know, he's been the player, the outfield player of the season. I don't think you get many arguments if I said that Dubravka's probably been Newcastle's player of the season. Yeah. But Saint-Maximin, you know, he came in, a lot of people questioning whether he'd be up for it, whether he'd be capable of, you know, doing what he's done in the Premier League. But look, he's one of those players that we'll love. We get out of our seats. You know, he gets it. You don't know what he's going to do. But unlike the likes of Ben Arthur and Tino, dare I say, he's got something about him, and he's starting to become an accomplished finisher as well, as he showed at the weekend.
And he's a very young man, Steve. We tend to forget that. He's a young man and he could become a huge star. For me, he was man of the match. Ritchie did terrific. Hayden did a lot of good work, which is unseen because it's scrapping in winning the ball, etc., etc. But the star, the man that fans love, is Maximin. Now, I thought he might suffer by no crowd, because in the nicest possible way, he plays to a crowd and he thrives off a crowd reaction. The sound of them as they get off their seat when he's on the ball, etc. He was wonderful. The pass on the Joelinton miss was exquisite. And some of the things he did in the whole of the match is special. My one concern, and we Geordies always have a concern. First of all, we think, oh, is he going to be just a show pony? And then we think, oh, he's going to be so good, or we're going to be able to hold on to him. Maybe he's with new owners and a different attitude and building a side, we will be able to. But he is becoming the talk of the Premier League, and people like Jamie Redknapp is banging the gong and people are listening to this. And the interesting thing is, in the last sort of 8 games that's left, he's going to become a target in the way that Jack Grealish is a target. Play Aston Villa, people want to see off Jack Grealish and you've got the game won. There'll be people saying now, if you want to keep Newcastle quiet and not them scoring, get a grip of Maximin, because he is the difference. Yes, there's Almiron's pace is a terrific help in getting the ball up the field, but for tricks, for things that can happen, Maximin is the typical Newcastle United fan player. And I'm delighted to happen. To have him. I was worried when he first come, Steve, that he might be just a show pony. You know, there's 76 step overs, but is there an end product? Apart from his goals, which you mentioned, the other thing that I'm getting impressed by is that when he gets into good positions now, he's looking up, Steve, before he delivers his pass. He used to just run with blinkers on and whack it across the goal and hope somebody was there. He's now looking up. His game is improving, and as I say, he's a very, very young man. And of course, on social media, he's got all the gift of the gab, and the fans love him.
He certainly has. I mean, he's taken to the area. He's bought into the area. He's got involved with the food bank, and social media is a wonderful tool if it's used correctly. And he's certainly done that. And I think he's become a bit of a cult hero, which is fantastic. And hopefully we can have a great end to the season and push Newcastle higher up the league and possibly to a cup final, which would be absolutely fantastic. The second goal was scored by Matt Ritchie. You've already said, mate, again. Yeah. Wonderful performance. I tried the game, and we'll come on to the crowd without yes. the sound of the crowd. And the one person you can hear, and I knew it would be the case, was Matt Ritchie. I mean,
absolutely.
And it's always constructive. Sometimes there's a bit of industrial language used if he's not happy with one. But in the grand scheme of things, for me, and I've said this, sometimes people have raised eyebrows. For me, he's a captain without the title.
Yeah,
At the moment, he is our leader. I do feel.
absolutely. He's got a terrific, bubbly nature to him. He's got a huge will to win and to lift people that surround him. And he's a good player. And the surprising thing for me, Steve, was that was his first goal of the season. When you think A, he takes penalties, B, he can take free kicks round the box, etc., etc., you think he's going to win with 4, maybe 5 in a season. Certainly capable of getting as many as Shelby. I know he hasn't played a lot of games, neither Shelby. But I mean, that was a good finish. Yes, they blamed Henderson. Ironic, isn't it? Henderson is getting talked of as the greatest goalkeeper in the history of goalkeepers, who's going to be Manchester United's #1 next season, England's #1. And then he gets the finger of suspicion pointed at him on the first goal because he was beaten at his near post, although Stevens put him off, and on this goal where he sort of froze on the spot. But I think it was a great finish by Ritchie. It was the pick of the 3 goals, and I was pleased for him because he does give us so much of what Newcastle's about. Him and Maximin epitomise what Newcastle's about. Ritchie does it in endeavour, desire, will to win, wearing your heart on your sleeve. Maximin does it with the extrovert that we've always loved throughout the history of the club.
We've spoken on NUFC matters on numerous occasions over the season, both you and myself and Malcolm, about Joelinton, and we've been fair to him. I think it's not his fault that the price tag's 40 million. He's given the number 9 shirt. Maybe that was too much pressure. But, he has had a lot of criticism from us, and I think rightly so. Did you see anything different at the weekend from Joelinton after the layoff? And obviously we're pleased, first half not so pleased, but second half pleased to see him at least get his goal.
Oh, I mean, without a shadow of doubt. If I've criticised Joelinton, it's because facts are facts. And at this moment, he's only got 2 Premier League goals in 30 games. Still not good enough. However, if he is centre forward for Newcastle, every Newcastle fan's desperate for him to score. And did I see anything different? In the end, Steve, yes, I did. And in the first half, I saw what was the same, which was another miss from an easy chance. But you know what pleased me with his goal, apart from ending the drought and it being his first goal at St James's Park, first Premier League goal at St James's Park, what really pleased me is when he played that ball off to Almiron. In the past, he's played it off to Almiron and stayed where he is, stayed still outside the box. This time, he played it off to Almiron and he buried in the box like a number 9 should do. He went in where it hurts, to the edge of the 6-yard box. The ball come across and he finished. That's where you get your goals. That's where he hasn't been going. That's where he did go this time. Please, Joelinton, you must have learned your lesson. You've got your reward. You've got to do it more often, son. Do that and you score goals. You look at a lot. The greatest goal scorer in Newcastle's history, Alan Shearer. How many goals did he score between the 6-yard box and the 18-yard line, where he went in where the knives were flashing and cutthroat and he finished close in? Good centre forwards get close in goals. Good midfielders get lashing long distance goals like Bobby Charlton. Real finishers, Greaves, Shearer, MacDonald, who could use his pace for the spectacular ones as well. Close in. That's where centre forwards get the goals. And he kept going. In the past, he didn't. He would have given the ball to Almiron and stayed back. He buried into the box, it came across, he finished. And wasn't he delighted, thumping the ground with his fist? The relief was there for everybody to say. When you go out tonight, Joelinton, have a look at your goal just before you go out and remember what you did and do it again.
Credit to Steve Bruce. I mean, they have spent a lot of time with him. They've said that, his coaches have analysed his games and, basically just told him to get in the box. It's as simple as that, because more, I think it's something like 60% of the goals are scored in that area and a cross in a first-time finish. And that's all he's got to do, and at least he's listening to his coaches. So hopefully, again, a late flourish.
It's taken a long time to listen to them, but he has listened to them. But I mean, the difficulty is for some players, it's fearsome in there, Steve. You know, you think, is my leg going to be broken? You know, are they going to rearrange my face? Or they're going? It is tough. That is a minefield, and you can subconsciously. I wouldn't pretend for 1 second he's afraid. I would never, never, never do that. But subconsciously, you've got to have that mentality of a centre forward who buries in there, puts his head in often where it's going to get kicked, which is what Shearer did and Ferdinand did and McDonald did, and then your goals come. And I hope that was a lesson learned, because the wonderful thing is he got his reward from doing that. Whereas if it had just gone wide or something, it would have been, well, so what? But that was good, and that was a plus, and I would be looking to see the guy do that more often.
The absentees, of course, in that game were notable. The two Longstaff brothers, both sitting in the stands for the game.
Yeah.
You know, it was disappointing to see, you know, Matty there. You know, we're led to believe there was some injury, but you know, hopefully the contract will be resolved. Have you heard anything on that, John, since we last spoke?
Well, I think there's a desperation on certain people's points, certainly Bruce, etc., to get that through the door. I think part of the trouble is Udinese has sort of put sparkle in the guy's eyes and made you think, oh, a big Italian club rate me so highly, the Newcastle rate me that highly, etc. But if we are going to sort out contracts for the like of Andy Carroll, who at this stage of his career has limited use because of injuries. There's no question of his ability if he could stay fit, but we patently know he cannot stay fit these days. I would have thought the Matty Longstaff contract is more important than the Andy Carroll contract. I would like to see that happen, and also because it gives a message to young kids that yes, there is a path into Newcastle first team and establishing yourself in the first team. Look at the Longstaffs. But it's so confusing at the moment, isn't it? Because we're also in the middle of a takeover. And would a new takeover, etc., want Andy Carroll at Newcastle, or think they could buy somebody that would play more games than him next season? And who would they want or not want? They're going to have to get what they're going to be given at this given moment.
What did you make of Andy Carroll's new facial hair at the weekend? Was that a throwback to Super Mac?
Well, it was a throwback to something. I thought he was Farmer Giles. I thought they were in the lock-in. He must have been on the farm, like on the track there with Brucey, doing the fields. I mean, what I want to see from Andy, and I'm not being obsessive, I would like him to look more like a goal-scoring centre forward than a farmer in Northumberland. And in fairness to him, I mean, I think with all his heart, that's what he wants to be, a goal-scoring centre forward. It's whether he can be again, whether his body will allow him to be again. And that's the harshness of football, because it is a problem, and he doesn't like it, and Newcastle don't like it. But I'm sick of seeing every time dear old Andy gets a mention, everybody says, if he's fully fit, he's off a handful, he's some player. Yes, but he isn't fully fit, and he very rarely is fully fit. That's the problem. I mean, you know, if Paul Gascoigne was 25 instead of 50, he'd be a great player. They're not anymore. Time doesn't wait for any man, and that's the problem we've got with Andy at the moment. The reason why Andy might get a contract, of course, is if you look at the centre forwards, we haven't got a goal-scoring centre forward along a whole lot of them. Joelinton we're going to stick with in terms of he'll be in the club. Mutu, Gale, Andy Carroll, you know, he's got the opportunity to stay because there's nobody around. And if we sign 2 strikers in the summer, you need 4. So that's where his luck might be in for one more season.
We've had a couple of outgoings. Jamie Sterry, which I think will surprise a few people because he was being tipped for potential glory at Newcastle, but that hasn't quite worked out. And I don't think there'll be any tears shed for Jack Colback leaving the club.
No, I've got a feeling. I don't know why, but I've got a feeling that's true, mate. Yes. No, no, there isn't. And I mean, Jack Colback knew his time was well up because he was. I mean, the amazing thing, looking back on him with Newcastle, the amazing thing is that he actually got an England call up, which we all forget about. I mean, I find that more staggering than what happened to him, poor soul, at the end of his time here. But I mean, Rafa Benitez wouldn't have him and effectively finished his Newcastle career when he banished him out of the first team training after a squabble, etc., etc. And didn't that show what wrong with Newcastle at that time when we were handing out 5-year contracts and 8-year contracts? I mean, Niall Ranger got one, Jack Colback got one, Rolando Aarons is still here because he got one. We handed out obscene contracts at that time, which meant we were stuck with people who wouldn't take a drop in wages to drop down a division or 2 divisions. They would stay on the Newcastle United wage. They were nonsense days, which have now gone. Colback was inevitable. Sterry was thought of as somebody that might make it, but that happens with a lot of kids, and then all of a sudden they disappear. I mean, Rolando Aarons was going to be Niall Ranger at one time, were going to be superstars, and never fulfilled that at all.
Yeah, you're right. We've got a little bit of an update on Takeover news, although it's gone a little bit quiet again on that front. And I think the main thing to talk about, John, is the Saudis' movement over the last few days to start nipping the violations in streaming, illegally streaming games. And I think it was the statement that was released in full, which basically said that they were going to block 231 websites that violated intellectual property regimes with a view to shutting them down. Now, this all smells a little bit to me, John, of maybe there's been some contact between the Premier League and the potential owners, and there's been a little bit of a deal done. You get this shut down and you do this, and we'll give you the green light.
Well, absolutely. There's absolutely no question about that, Steve. You may remember you do so many of these podcasts with so many people, but a couple of times back when we did one, and I was asked about the talk, and I said, I don't think it'll happen before the WTO report is made public. Which is the report that condemned the Saudis. The Premier League already knew what it said because they had a copy. But I think they wanted it out in the public domain so that the public could see what the hold-up was all about. And then I forecasted they would do it, and they did do it, which is they then used it as a weapon against the Saudis. You know, a lot of people said, well, let Saudis take over Newcastle, you've got them indoors, and then see if they'll drop the piracy. But of course, the Premier League don't look at it that way. The greatest clout they've got is saying, we'll not rubber stamp the Newcastle United deal unless you sort out this piracy, which the Premier League's been trying to sort out in 2018. There has, I know, been dialogue between the group, that's Amanda, the Rubins and the Saudis, and mainly the Saudis, of course, because of the piracy, and the Premier League, off the record during this break. And that's why the Saudis have made the announcement they have. And I do believe that this will lead to the deal finally, after something, 3 months, being ratified. Now, the answer then is, when does it happen? And I wouldn't dream of trying to put a time on it, because we've all tried to do that since about 3 weeks into the Premier League having this. There's 2 times they can do it. They can do it the minute they decide that there's nothing to hold up the deal and they inform the prospective buyers, yes, we're going to give the go-ahead, or they can do it, which is much more likely, because the Premier League will probably allow the buyers and or Ashley to announce it rather than them. The normal way is that you, having agreed that it can go ahead, you wait until the monies is transferred from the buyer's bank account to the owner's bank account, the 300 million minus the 17 million deposit, and they could wait for that being cleared and then announce the takeover is happened. But I do believe I've always thought it would happen, but I've wavered on occasions because we all have. When something takes this long, I mean, if you ask your missus to get married and it takes her 3 months to make up her mind, you might just waver a little bit and think, this ain't going to happen. I better cancel the bachelor night or just have it and not get married. And this, I think this has been one of those occasions. I do think it will happen. And yes, we're going to get all the fly-by-nights or the Rubens trying to buy into the New York Mets. So I don't think, is the thing with Amanda in the High Court. No, I don't think they come into the current Newcastle United situation at all, and I would expect it to happen. But whether we've got to wait another fortnight, week and a half until Mike, who has already said his goodbyes, whether we wait until the money's in his bank account before it's annoyed, I don't mind as long as we're here and we don't wait too long. We'll certainly know before Newcastle get to the end of this season, long before I would suspect.
Do you think that, John? Because I had a thought this morning before we spoke. I'm just wondering whether, even if the deal goes through and it's agreed and the money's exchanged, whether there's a thought on the buyer's side that maybe, there's something sensible about waiting until the season is finished. So Newcastle are safe, the season plays out, and then you're almost back to, it would suit everyone's agenda. It's almost like a clean break. You're ruling off on the season. There's a full stop at the end of it, and then the transfer window, you deal with who you want in, who's going to come, who's going to be released, and Steve Bruce's job. He's either given assurances that he's staying, and or he's told that he's no longer required. There's almost a sense of that might work out better in the long run, rather than 4 or 5 games before the end of the season coming in, and we'll have all the turmoil that a takeover, regardless of whether it's a positive one or not, will cause. The distraction it'll cause. Everyone will be talking about it. Steve Bruce's job will be questioned, and I just think maybe there might be a reason for doing it. Then it just struck us this morning, John. I'm not sure what your thoughts on that are. I know the stress levels will still go through the roof, of course, if they've got to wait another month. But
I can follow the logic totally of what you're saying, Steve. The only things against it, if you like, and that makes sense, is 2 things. First of all, Newcastle United fans will be cutting their throat by a month's time if nothing has been said one way or the other, without a shadow of doubt. So if you want to put a badly injured dog out of its agony, you do so now. You don't say, well, I'll put it down in a month's time, or I'll leave it in labour for a month. Hopefully, Steve, the point of Newcastle being safe and all that, hopefully if they beat Aston Villa tonight, they're safe. So that'll be taken care of before the takeover happen. And if I was moving in and I had to go ahead to do so, but I decided I wouldn't do so for a month, if they start talking privately behind the scenes to people like Matty Longstaff to say, we want you to stay, Andy Carroll, we want you to stay, or we don't, they've only got to start talking to them, and they won't keep it a secret. They won't keep the takeover a secret. It will leak out from in the dressing room that the takeover has happened. So I think it would be difficult to I know the hoopla, and you're saying, would it be a distraction? I mean, all people, bless them, have been talking about Steve Bruce's job since the day he walked into the building, whether he should be in the building or he shouldn't. And he's lived with that and lived with it well. I can follow all the logic, but I just think after 3 months, to keep Newcastle United fans on tenterhooks for another month, to have the speculation daily continue for another month, I'm certain the Premier League wouldn't want that, because it would look like they're dragging their heels if nothing is said for yet another month into 4 months. And so I've got a suspicion it wouldn't happen. Although it being all neat and tidy in a box with a pink bow on it makes a lot of sense. But do you want to wait another month? Not knowing one way or another? Do I? Do 50,000 Geordies? Don't think so.
Let's talk about Steve Bruce. Gary Neville, obviously a pundit on Sky. A lot of people, do enjoy listening to Gary Neville. obviously a leader of the Steve Bruce fan club. I can understand that, being a former teammate and obviously, influenced by him at Manchester United. I'm not sure whether you saw it, but on Sky, more or less said that he should keep the job, and that any new owners coming in should give him the opportunity, because he's a great manager. And he, he's not had the chance to do, what others have had to do, which is spend lots of money. So they should stick with him. What did you make of that, John? Do you agree with it?
Well, the interesting thing with Steve Bruce is that he has got, and having known Brucey since he was a player at Wolves and Boysler, I can understand why, he has got a terrific number of friends and support. He's got as many people in the football fraternity on his side as he's got Newcastle United fans saying, no, not good enough. And that's because he is a man's man and he gets on terrific with people. And there's a lot of ex-players who are his supporters. There's even people like Alan Shearer, who advised him not to take the job, but totally wants him to be a success and for it to happen. The bottom, and yes, I think that when this season ends, and it will end with Newcastle staying up, and if they win tonight, it will end up with them staying up with 7 games to go. So you cannot say he hasn't done the first job that was asked of him, absolutely no question. But in the end, it doesn't become a matter of opinion. It doesn't become whether Gary Neville's right or he isn't right, whether another ex-player, like all the players that are saying he should stay. It doesn't matter if the fans want to go. It doesn't matter what Shearer says or anybody. It's what the owners say. And the owners, I believe, if they're the current owners that look as if they're coming in, within a year, and we can't put a time factor on this, Steve Bruce won't be the manager. A new owner always brings in the man he wants. It sometimes takes time, as we saw, and I've hopped on before, with Ashley doing with Sam Allardyce, and as Mansour, when he went into Manchester City, he always got the thick end of a year before he went, and he went on to Mancini and then up to Pep. So I wouldn't be at all surprised the quickness of next season coming round if Steve was still there for the beginning, but he won't be there in a year's time.
Fair enough, John. Aston Villa at home tonight, and
Yep.
Newcastle and Steve Bruce chasing 3 consecutive home wins.
Yes, absolutely.
Time since Rafa Benitez, I think.
Wait a minute, 3 home wins?
Is that right? 3 successive Premier League victories for the first time as Newcastle lost. That's it.
Yeah, because they drew 0-0 at home to Burnley, didn't they? In that turgid game before it all broke down.
I remember rightly, I think it was under Rafa the last time we won three Premier League games in a row. I think it was 2018 or something like that.
Back to the Rafa and Steve Bruce situation. And by the way, on Stevie Bruce, he's such a lovely man. My opinion is he won't be here in a year's time. It doesn't mean that I'm vindictive about him, because if Newcastle fans got to know him, you wouldn't find a nicer bloke. But that isn't what football life's all about. And Steve knows he's suffered through it, and when he's had the sack, and he's done the hard thing when he left Sheffield Wednesday in the lurch to come here. Football is like that. As far as this Villa game's concerned tonight, I believe Newcastle will win, and in winning, I think it'll make Newcastle safe, because they'll have topped 40 points, and that is always enough. In the last decade, no side has gone down with 40 points, and if they win tonight, they'll be on 41. So they'll be safe with 7 games to go. That is a huge achievement. It will also put Aston Villa on the verge of going down. And they're not my favourite club, so I'm not going to worry too much about that, because they seem to take great joy in us going down a little while back, if I remember. So if they go back from whence they came, now I'm going to really have crocodile tears on it. But I mean, if we're truthful, I think it's 3 out of 5 to go down: Norwich, Villa, Bournemouth, West Ham, and Watford. And of course, we've got Villa, Bournemouth, and West Ham immediately on our horizon. So we are going to have a huge say in who actually takes the drop. Villa have the worst defensive record in the Premier League. They've let in 58 goals in 30 games. Now, that doesn't speak well for them tonight or at any time. And the way they play, the back doesn't get much protection from the midfield. You know, we can have Hayden in there, Shelby plays deep. We can help our back four or our back five, as it used to be, an awful lot. They don't protect theirs, and they get picked up and taken out as a consequence. I don't think they're going to be good enough to hold out against us for the full 90 minutes. It doesn't help having no crowd in the ground. I think there's absolutely no question about that. And Newcastle will find that tonight, because if you need a lift, you're not going to get it. And if you're playing away, you're not going to be under huge pressure because the fans aren't baying against you. And that's why we get a few away results out of this. But Villa, stop Grealish and you've stopped Villa. McGinn's a good player, but he came back against Chelsea after a long, long layoff and looked a shadow if what he can be. He's not up to speed as yet. I would think that Newcastle would win tonight 2-0, at least the famous 1-0, which we're quite decent at doing when we do win. And we'd be safe, and that will be a nice platform to be safe in the league and go in to a quarter-final of the FA Cup, knowing we're going to be in the league next season. Now, come on, is that a nice little cherry for this weekend?
Oh, 100%. I'm going for the same scoreline, John. I think 3-0. I think Newcastle, I think they've got a taste for scoring goals after the weekend, and I do think that, Villa are there for the take. And squad news, obviously, Lejeune, Clark and Sean Longstaff are still unfit, but Matty Longstaff should return to the bench at least tonight.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for Brucey to decide is that with 3 matches in a week, and I know everybody's going to be doing this, but with limited training, so the fitness is not there. And by Joe, isn't it a hot day today? They're going to feel that at 6 o'clock tonight. It's going to be like when I used to go and do the World Cups abroad, and you were playing in the heat in June. Like I always remember England 1970 in the World Cup in Mexico, the famous double saver banks. The heat there was stupendous. You're going to have that tonight. Can we get 3 games in a week out of certain players, fitness-wise? And if not, what's he do? Does he keep a couple for Man City, or does he go and get the points tonight and let Man City take care of itself? It's going to be interesting, but it's 3 games at St James's Park in a week. Let's bring it on. Let's beat Villa. Let's be safe. Yes, Manchester City is a huge ask because they are a terrific team, the second best team in the country after Liverpool. They haven't got anything to play for in the league. They've got everything to play for in the FA Cup and the Champions League. It's going to be tough, but we've got to remember, twice they've played us recently, this season and last season, at St James's Park in the Premier League, and they've won neither. We've got a draw with Man City this season, and we'll beat them at home last season. It is not an impossible task. Let's keep the faith. Let's get the job done tonight and move on from that, Steve.
I'll not have you on before the FA Cup game at the weekend, so let's look ahead to that. Not that we like to celebrate anyone getting injured, John, but Sergio Aguero's season's over. He's going to see a knee specialist in Spain, and let's face it, he's a bit of a nemesis for Newcastle United.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's nothing but good news for us. There's no question about that. I would like another 6 to get injured, mind, because, I mean, their reserve side is stronger than a lot of Premier League first team sides. There's absolutely no question about that. They've got a massive, they bring in Jesus, and if they get an injury outside left, they bring in Foden, and, they've got great players. But for me, if we get the job done tonight, it's almost like a free swing against Manchester City, because everybody outside of Geordie's will be expecting Manchester City to win. They're favourites for the FA Cup with Liverpool out of the FA Cup. So we've almost got a free swing at it. Let's just go and have a little dip at them and have a go at them. And if we lose, so what? It would be expected in the lay of the land. But if we don't, what a terrific result. And then we go to Wembley. I mean, we daren't think about it, but we're Fantasy Island guys, so we will. How about a top-half finish in winning the FA Cup? There's a one now. Can we dare we think about that, Steve?
Well, we'll be asking Mike Ashley to stay then.
No, will be. It'll be because he's on the verge of leaving that we've achieved it. It was certainly not. In fact, if it guaranteed Ashley out of town, I would lose every game between now and the end of the season, including the FA Cup, just to get him out of town, because we still wouldn't be relegated and he'd be gone. So no, we wouldn't be asking Ashley to stay. Under no circumstances whatsoever would we be asking Mr. Ashley to stay. 13 years is 12 and a half too long.
Fair play, mate. Before we finish, I just want to pay tribute to two ex-players who celebrate their birthdays today. Kevin Nolan, of course,
Indeed.
Who got that wonderful hat-trick against Sunderland in Halloween.
Yes.
And somebody who you know very well celebrates his birthday today as well, and who I'm sure you can say a few words about, John Tudor.
Oh, yes, a wonderful lad. Nolan will always be grateful for his hat-trick in that game and for the way he helped to get us back in the top league. By the way, Bushy won't thank him for that hat-trick, because if you remember, Bushy was manager of Sunderland at the time, so he won't be raising a glass in celebration. John Tudor, a wonderful, underrated striker, underrated by everybody, by bar Supermac, by the way, as you well know. 1974 Cup final, the pair of them. Wonderful player, big heart, one of the best headers of a ball, which is often forgotten. We talk about Alan Shearer and Les Ferdinand, etc. Tudor was immense. He lives over in America these days, as you know, Steve, not in the best of health, and had a touch of dementia. It's been a hard old time for John, but we remember him with great fondness. King John, King Tudor, as he was known in the days, and anybody that serves Newcastle well and serves them with loyalty and serves them with goals, and he did all those things, will always have a place in the hearts of Geordie fans, and John Tudor is definitely one of those.
A happy birthday to both of them. John, let's have a quick prediction for the Man City game as well, mate.
Oh, no, that's a hard one, isn't it? I mean, my head would tell me that it's going to be a step too far, but my heart tells me that we're going to win 2-1, because they're going to have 3 players sent off, and they're going to score an OG in the last minute. So I have not given up hope whatsoever of Newcastle getting through to the semi. I genuinely haven't. A lot will depend on tonight, you know. If Newcastle lost at home tonight, it would be a different ball game mood-wise going into the weekend, wouldn't it? If Newcastle win and they're safe, we'll be up and we're on a free swing. You just don't give up hope. As long as you're alive, you've got hope. And when you're my age, when you wake up in the morning and you know you're alive, you have hope. And I've got hope. Albeit it's a gamble, but let's look at a 2-1 and let the heart rule the head for a change.
With the fans obviously not allowed to go to the semi-final, John, I'm just double-checking I'm still okay to carry your bag to Wembley.
You can do what you like. If we are at Wembley, pal, both the semi-final and the final, I will settle for absolutely anything. I've been waiting for... I've actually been to Wembley 3 times since the 50s, when I watched Newcastle as a kid in my little short grey school trousers. I've been to Wembley 3 times in the FA Cup, in 74, 98 and 99, and 76 in the League Cup, and never seen we win at all. So, and of course the semi-final with Bobby Robson, which was possibly our best Wembley display when we almost won it, and that Gus Poyet just killed us after Rob Lee scored. It would be a wonderful moment to go there, and that would just round off this year. But please, if we do get to the final, let there be a crowd in Wembley. Can you imagine Newcastle getting the final and winning the cup and the Geordies not be allowed to be on the terraces? Mind you, I'll take it if it's the only way we can win the cup, but let's have it there. Let's do first things first, because if we lose tonight and lose against City, we might be talking differently, you and I, next week. But let's get the jobs done.
Let's not forget, John, we're doing Newcastle a disservice, because in 1988, of course, we did record a Wembley victory. beating Liverpool 1-0 in the Mercantile Credit Classic.
Oh, it was a classic, of course. No wonder I forget. I didn't remember that.
Neil
Yes,
MacDonald penalty, John. Neil MacDonald penalty.
yeah, we have a habit of winning egg cups, but not proper cups, and therefore I quite like to dismiss the fact that we did something like that. I always say when I was at Gateshead, I brought the entertainers across to the International Stadium, which was the debut on Tyneside of Ginola and Ferdinand, and we lost 4-0. But I did say we did get a corner in that game. We did get a corner, and I told the boys, the minute we get a corner, do a lap of honour before you take the corner, because that's as close as we're going to get to score against the Newcastle first team. So, yeah, we do win egg cups, but let us win big cups now.
Great stuff, John, as always. Lovely to speak to you. Look forward to speaking to you next Wednesday, mate.
And you, keep the faith, pal.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.